Hey, welcome back to the CommonGround North Dakota podcast. I'm Heather.
And I'm Jen.
I've been a chef for 10 years.
And I'm a registered dietitian. We've all heard the saying, farm to table. But what if the conversation was table to farm?
Join Jen and I as we sit down with ag experts to dig in and find out more about North Dakota agriculture. Welcome back to CommonGround North Dakota podcast. I'm Heather.
I'm Jen.
And we're in the studio for another episode.
Yeah, it seems like we haven't got together for a while.
I missed you. I've been rewatching episodes.
It's kind of fun, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Mike, did I really say that?
Yeah, we did. Mm-hmm.
But we learn a lot.
We've come a long way.
I know, and we're educating many people along the way.
The masses.
Isn't it kind of fun when you're out in public and they're like, oh, Jen, I listened to your podcast. Or Heather, I listened to your last podcast.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, yeah. And then they get me started. I'm like, well, you really need to watch this one.
Yes.
This one.
You give them 5 more.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
there's a lot of good ones out there. And today's I'm really excited about.
I know there's so much to learn.
Yes.
And like teaching agriculture and
there's so much that I feel like we got to get started.
I
can't
think
waste
so too.
Any time.
Nope, no time chit-chatting.
Yes.
Let's get to it.
Yes. In studio, we're excited to have Megan Overby. Welcome.
Welcome, Megan.
Thank you, guys. I'm so happy to be here.
Okay, so tell us all your titles. Can you please?
Well, I'll start with the easy one.
Okay.
First of all, on myself.
Okay.
I am a wife, a farm and ranch wife,
Okay.
but I'm also a farmer and rancher's daughter.
Ooh.
Oh.
So,
family.
and all my family and my current family are still involved in agriculture.
Okay.
But then I guess my official business title would be Northeast Field Representative for NDFB, which stands for North Dakota Farm Bureau.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Wow. So you grew up on a farm, you're living on a farm, and you're working for Farm Services. Well,
Farm Bureau?
Farm Bureau.
North Dakota Farm Bureau. So talk about what that organization is and what it does, like the mission of it.
Yes. So a lot of farmers and ranchers that are out there probably have heard of North Dakota Farm Bureau, NDFB. But for the general public, they're like, well, I don't know what NDFB is. It has farm in it. Cool. And they move on with their lives.
Right.
But
That's me. Yeah.
we are a general farm organization in the state. So we have about 28,000 member families throughout the entire state.
Wow.
And I won't sit here and read our mission statement because who memorizes mission statements? I don't. And we really need to update ours because it's about this long.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, but basically we advocate for farmers and ranchers.
Oh, okay.
So they are able to continue farming and ranching in ways that work for them, but also for the general public and consumers. And I know you mentioned the ag education portion about that, and we'll get more into that.
Okay.
But that's just the basic description.
So the education is included in that role.
Yep, because when you think of the word advocacy, you know, you can think of it in many different ways, can't you?
Yes, absolutely.
So, and we can get into more of those ways as you guys ask questions. But yeah, we advocate for farmers and ranchers throughout the state.
Wow.
That's so cool. So talk about like what kinds of crops and livestock do you take care of on your current farm?
Yes, so this is probably the part of the conversation that most excites me because I get to tell my personal story, but also the story of my family's farm and ranch and my husband and I's farm and ranch. So growing up, I told you this when we were chit-chatting beforehand. We had to make sure not to talk about too much and share it with everybody
Share all
else
the
out
secrets
there.
before.
So I grew up on a small family farm and ranch in the Michigan, North Dakota area.
Okay.
So if you're looking at the geography of North Dakota, if you go from Grand Forks to Devil's Lake along Highway 2, you draw a straight line and we're smack dab in the middle of it.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Yes. So that's where I grew up. Growing up, we had both crops and cattle.
Okay.
Okay.
So mostly Black Angus cattle, if we want to get into the cattle
Yeah,
breeds.
We like to know. We like to know.
do.
Yep.
Are they red? Are they black? Are they tan?
Yes.
We need to know all about the cows.
Yes.
Yes. So that's my preference in cattle. Disclaimer
Black
for everybody
Angus.
out there.
All right.
So yeah, we grew up raising cattle. The crops that we farmed and raised growing up were wheat, barley, oats, so various different varieties of small grains.
Okay.
And then in the past, we currently grow soybeans as well. My mom, dad, and brother do.
Okay.
Have grown corn in the past, dry edible beans. So a great diversity of crops that I was exposed to growing up. Canola. How could I forget canola?
Oh, that's a pretty one.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Pretty but stinky.
Oh, didn't know that.
Yes. So when it flowers, that's a question you can ask later on if you want. But today, so I moved basically 60 miles pretty much straight south of where I grew up, but a little west in a teeny tiny town called Binford, North Dakota.
But see, okay, I was looking at your Facebook page, Binford Farms or Ranch.
Yep, Overby Ranch.
Oh, it was so beautiful. The pictures you're taking, I felt like I was right there with the cattle. It's gorgeous.
So that's the one thing I love to tell people about because I grew up in a very gorgeous area as well. Well, the one question I always got asked when I told people where I live, oh, so you're in the Red River Valley where my family farms. I'm like, oh, no. No, soil types are completely different. We still have a little bit of that rolling hill, little more scenery. But where I live now is absolutely gorgeous.
It's
I call
beautiful.
it the secret sand hills of eastern North Dakota.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because the soil types, just our geography, everything is so different. But my favorite view is looking out our kitchen window.
Oh.
And we have, pretty large rolling hills out there for North Dakota.
Right.
And the cattle are out there grazing, they're even out there grazing right now because it's so gorgeous out. But that summertime scenery is just beautiful.
It's beautiful landscape. And you do a great job of capturing it.
Yes, you do.
Well, thank you. So obviously, I still raise cattle today with my husband, along with my mother and father-in-law. And then he has 2 siblings that are still involved with raising cattle as well.
But you had that cattle knowledge growing up and were able to continue
Yes,
on.
transition that. Obviously, I don't go asking my husband, my future husband, when I was seeking one out, okay, do you have cattle? Do you have crops?
It's on the checklist. What kind of cattle? Are they Black Angus?
Oh, sorry.
We got into that, more when we had been dating for a few months. I had to make sure he was qualified.
Did he have the type of cattle you liked, or did you have to?
He did.
Okay.
I let him keep a few red ones.
All right. It's all about compromise.
Compromise.
Right. Yep.
So that's why it's a great marriage.
Good.
So we still have the cattle, and we'll probably talk a lot more about them in the podcast because I could sit here for 3 hours and talk about cattle with you ladies.
Awesome.
But then on our farm, we primarily grow and raise wheat, corn, soybeans, and then, of course, some forages to feed our cattle. So,
So describe forages. What does that mean for our consumers?
And, usually I try not to use fancy words like forages.
We like it, though.
We like it.
Yeah.
That's
what
the good
teaches us.
Yeah.
Right.
This is how we learn.
Now we can use that on the street
educate.
and sound really smart.
I even run
we
into
talked about
that
forages.
with my own friends. They're like, wait, what? Because they don't raise cattle.
Right.
They may farm.
Yep.
But they're like, what is a forage? So basically forages are anything green or, that have a plant kind of base or substance to them that our livestock can eat.
Sure.
So we have anything from like the prairie grass hay.
Okay.
I was listening in some past episodes, so we talked about a few of these things before. So hay, alfalfa.
Yeah.
Okay.
But forages, can also be summarized into some of the plants that we grow. We raise a special type of corn called silage corn that, we can harvest that in a different method, not with a combine, with a silage chopper. And then we put that in a big pile and eventually that ferments and makes it taste good for the cattle. That's a type of forage. But, with alfalfa too, we do that similar harvest process as we do silage corn, put it in a pile and it ferments and it tastes just extra good and all those nutrients are in
Interesting.
it.
I bet the fermentation helps digestion too, right?
It does.
For GI health.
Yeah.
We
like that as dietitians and chefs, right?
Okay.
Yes. So,
Gives it a nice little tang and helps digestion. Okay.
but to sum it up, basically forages are anything green that cattle can eat.
Sure.
Okay.
And you're growing those right on your farm for your cattle. That's great.
Yes,
That
it's a
is.
full circle effect on our farm. So,
Okay, wait. So you left a part out because you there was something in between the ranching, right? You did some, what did you do in between? Come on, Megan.
Well, to explain how I am where I am today and why I'm doing it, well, of course, I grew up in a small farming community.
Okay.
And, I enjoyed agriculture, but when I decided where I wanted to go to college and what I wanted to do, I said, well, I've been around this farming stuff all my life. I'm going to try something completely different.
Okay.
So long story short, I was like, I'm going to be a doctor.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
So, the human health side of it, because I'd grown up with it, with the livestock health
Yes,
side of it.
sure.
Being that doctor to cattle and animals on our farm.
I can see that connection.
So I actually attended Concordia College in Moorhead, Minnesota.
Okay.
And I have a biology major from there.
Oh, cool.
That's awesome.
But you may wonder, well, what are you doing with a biology major? Why didn't you go to medical school? Why aren't you a nurse? Why didn't you pursue that? Well, there's this great thing in the Fargo-Moorhead area called the Tri-College System.
Yep.
And so at North Dakota State University, of course, I had a lot of friends from back home that were attending that for agriculture.
Yep.
Okay.
But I still participated in some of those agriculture clubs and activities with my friends because I could do so.
Right.
And I just got hooked and all back into the world of agriculture. So I did complete my biology major, but then I already had all these, chemistry and biology courses that I had to take. And so after I graduated, I then transferred to North Dakota State University, where I got an animal science major and an ag communications minor.
Wow.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because
amazing.
I'm like, nope, I can't fight it. I have to be in agriculture.
You gotta honor yourself.
Yes. But now you know too, right?
Yes. So, and as we were talking about beforehand, you're like, wow, you seem comfortable in front of them.
Yes.
You have no problem talking. My husband would say the same thing. I
You're in good company here, Megan.
I have no problem talking. He probably just wishes I had.
And you're good at it.
You are. Absolutely. So talk about that.
Yes. So that agriculture communications minor I mentioned.
Yep.
Well, I'm a livestock geek, but I wanted to use that to communicate what's going on in agriculture and what farmers and ranchers are doing.
Okay.
So I actually had an internship with a farm radio network when I was in college.
Oh, fun.
Instantly fell in love with farm broadcasting.
Cool.
Okay.
So then I actually spent about 5 years after I did some internships in farm radio and took a job. Well, I'm right back in my old stomping grounds with the Red River Farm Network. And I was a farm broadcaster there for almost 5 years.
Oh, wow.
That's awesome.
So you have done a lot. Yes.
I try. I try to think that I have.
So talk a little bit about how you connect your experiences and you do education, right? With youth in our area, in our state. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So eventually I married a farmer.
Okay. Yep.
It was bound to happen, right?
I mean,
It was meant to be. And I snagged a good one. I'll tell you that for free. And so, of course, I was living in Grand Forks, but our farm and ranch where we were going to make our future together was 90 miles one direction.
You can't do a commute like that.
That just doesn't work.
It's too hard.
So eventually I had been a member of North Dakota Farm Bureau for many, many years growing up. My family, it was a family organization that we had always just been associated with. And so I saw they had an opening for a Northwest field representative. Applied for the job, got it. It was perfect because I could work remotely.
Oh, great.
I could still be at home with my husband on the farm and farm and ranch and have that flexibility.
Okay.
But I didn't 100% know what my job would all entail. I just knew I still got to work with farmers and ranchers. I got to be home at the end of the day.
Yep.
I got to travel Northeast North Dakota. And so I would say the major components of what I do when we talked about advocacy.
Yes.
So one area that we advocate for, of course, is farmers and ranchers on policy.
Okay.
Those decisions that are, made into law that affect farming and ranching, not only in our state, but nationwide. And then another big component of that advocacy, of course, is education. Not only educating, in a sense, farmers and ranchers about the nitty-gritty details of what's going on, why this would affect how you operate on your farm and ranch. But we, of course, have to educate those consumers.
Right.
And consumers age from, their ages range from just an infant all the way up, to seniors.
Yep.
You think of, when I think of a consumer in my mind, and this may spar a little conversation too, but, I think of a consumer as like the mom that's at the grocery store.
Right.
But really, there's farmers out there that may not ranch, that don't know anything about cattle. It's not only educating ourselves, but it's, the people that do the grocery shopping, the kids that are in school, even older people living in senior living communities. A consumer is so much more than just what that picture you have in your head.
It's so broad. So how do you hit all those different consumers?
Yes. Well, the big component about education too is networking. So, we hold different events, conferences for our members and people that aren't members too, to bring in experts in different areas, whether it be agronomy, animal nutrition, you name it. They get to come to a conference that we plan and get educated and use those educational tools and bring them back to their own farm and ranch.
Sure. And spread the word. And
Yes. So it's that networking component. That's one form of education. But, another focus we take is really the people that are still going to be here on this planet 40, 50, 60 years from now, and that's our children.
Yes.
So we do like to connect with schools. We host different events throughout the year. One really cool one that's actually coming up at the end of February. And it's right here in North Dakota, but we hold throughout various larger communities throughout the state, is called Special Assignment Pizza.
Oh, yes, I've heard of this.
That caught my attention. What's that about?
Well, that's how we catch the attention of fourth graders.
Yes.
You say pizza and they're like, oh my goodness.
I'm there.
Well, and
we're there.
You talk about like partnering. So a lot of my dietitian students are part of that education. That's something that they do in their curriculum, because then it connects the farm, communities with like the nutrition and the health and like understanding like why and what and the nutrients in them. So it's really cool.
So that's the cool thing for the farmers and ranchers that volunteer for that event, is we can explain the ingredients in your pizza. The farm kids that come, from more rural community schools, of course, know, well, wheat is in dough.
Right.
Tomatoes make the marinara sauce. They already know that. But, it's not only cool to connect the ingredient to what's on your pizza, of course, cheese, milk, dairy cattle, but it's also excellent. Like you said, we have some nutrition and dietetic students that volunteer their time. We have educators, extension educators from NDSU that, are kind of the brainchild of the event, and they help facilitate and organize it. So you have so many experts there that can explain, okay, these are the ingredients in your pizza, but why are they good for you?
Right.
Why should we eat some of them in moderation? So it's really about connecting so many experts so they can get that full effect of, wow, I'm going to think differently next time I eat this slice of pepperoni pizza.
Absolutely. My daughter was in 4th grade last year and got to experience it. And I didn't know, I probably knew it was coming up, but then she came home so excited. First of all, because it was like such a cool name. So you're doing a great job there.
Good marketing.
Like if it makes the top 3 things that went well in the day, you're winning with 4th graders, right?
Well, and they got out of school. That's
I know, and
step
it's like
one.
fun, right? And then it's like, oh, mom, and then I saw some of your dietitian friends too. So that's really cool.
And I met this lady who has cattle.
Yes.
That's so cool.
It is
I met
cool.
a pig farmer.
Yes.
I met
They love to hear about that too.
that farmer that drives that really, really big combine out there.
It's so cool to them.
Yes.
And that's, I think, great. Like it makes it cool, like and unique that we have these folks that are growing ingredients, raising those animals that go into like what you're eating every day. I think it's a source of pride That's how I see it. I'm like,
Yes.
oh. And then it brings me back to my roots where we had cattle and like my dad farmed, and we can talk about that then too.
And it's
Yes.
happening in our backyards,
Right.
but sometimes kids don't have access to that. So
Right.
they don't know. So I
They
love that
don't.
you're bringing it to kids that maybe wouldn't be able to go to a farm otherwise.
Well, and I love that you brought that up because that brings me one step further into another really cool event that on behalf of NDFB, they help facilitate and organize. Again, along with other commodity groups throughout our state. You know, you have the wheat growers, the soybean growers, the corn growers. All of these ag organizations come together to host something really cool called Living Ag in the Classroom.
Okay.
Yes, love that too.
Yes. So those are primarily held in our larger metropolitan areas. So Grand Forks, Fargo, Minot, Bismarck.
Okay.
And so they basically set up, they try to do the best they can. They basically bring the farm inside.
Wow.
You know, in the middle of winter, they bring in sheep, they bring in pigs, they bring in cattle. Baby calves, because those take up a lot of space, big, fully grown cows. But then they also, you know, bring in honey producers, canola.
Wow.
They still do that same educational component, sugar beets, potatoes, you know. Well, this is a sugar beet. It makes sugar.
This is how.
Just to see the pure amazement, you know, because especially the Fargo one, I've helped out there a couple different times. And I mean, you have kids from all sorts of different backgrounds, all sorts of different ages. Some of them have never set foot on a farm. They have hardly drove outside of Fargo and seen a combine in the field or a sugar beet harvester. And just to see, you know, a replica of a real size sugar beet or to see a baby calf in person.
Cool.
I think that's just a learning experience for them all.
Absolutely.
You know, to see it in the flesh, real life. And then they bring home those cool things. Like, well, so I've worked at the sugar beet station as well.
Did you? Oh, I love the sugar beets.
And the one that throws them off
is what?
How is brown sugar made?
Yes.
Oh.
Molasses.
Yes, you mix white sugar and molasses. We have the ingredients sitting out for them, and they're just like, I don't know how this happens. So that's the one thing.
Just put it in my cookies. We're good.
Yes, their eyes are just like, wow.
Well, and I love the connection from the ingredients to the food. I think that can often be missed, especially with kids. They can't get that concept.
So there's just so many things they learn. Those are just two of the many things that we do throughout the year, but are really big things.
Those are big things.
You know, and we talk about organizations in North Dakota, farm and ranch. Granted, we all have our own members. We all have our own views and ideas, but you can see all these organizations come together for one event. And that's, you know, to educate people out there about agriculture.
So what's a fun memory that you remember from one of those events that you've hosted? Is there anything that really stands out?
Well, again, this podcast will be 3 hours long if you just let me roll with it. But I will say Special Assignment Pizza is one of my favorite. It's the one that I've got to volunteer for the most.
Okay.
And you know, get to go to for work and whatnot. But when I'm there, this is going to be no surprise to you ladies, but of course, I am at the beef and pork booth.
Okay.
I'm going to talk about the protein in their pizza.
Yep.
You know, because not only is that the area of knowledge that I'm most comfortable with, but it's cool to talk about cattle and pigs and, you know. Okay, so we asked them to name their favorite pizza topping. That's a protein. Of course, there's the one kid, cheese. I like cheese. And I'm like, well, no protein.
Right.
It has some in there, but
that
like goes
meat.
in the dairy group.
Meat, guys. Think of meat. And they're like chicken, you know, but the most common answer is pepperoni.
Yes.
So when you explain to them that pepperoni is a combination of beef and pork, but we take it one step further and say, well, you realize, and for some kids, it might be a little grotesque to think of, well, oh no, that's where my pepperoni comes from. But you explain the process and why we raise cattle and swine, you know, they have a purpose on this planet and that is for consumption.
Right.
to keep you, healthy and nutritious. And, some of them will just leave there and still think, ooh, that's gross.
I don't know if I want to associate those.
But a lot of them are like, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It got them thinking.
It
right?
does. And so talking, protein and this and that, and actually explaining how a pepperoni is made, that's probably the memory I have the most. But they really get it when they leave the room.
I bet so many of those kids on the way home are in the back seat saying, Mom,
Did
Dad,
you know?
do you want to hear how pepperoni's made? Like, I'm sure, because I can just hear my kids saying that right now.
Yeah,
Fun
but they
facts.
need to know that.
They do need to know that at a young age, because you think there's adults that don't even know that.
Yes. That's 100% true.
Yes.
The pepperoni or hamburger that's on your pizza, it comes from the grocery store.
Right.
But that's one of those products that goes through many different steps to get into its form. And yeah, that's important for them to know.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's great.
I love those events.
I do too. I love hearing about it. And so one thing you kind of just went over that I'm curious about is the policy piece.
Oh, yeah.
So what's going on with that? Like right now, what policies are you focused on? Are ranchers focused on? What are you seeing?
What are the hot topics?
We want to know.
And disclaimer, I'm totally not a policy expert. I can give you the general broad spectrum.
Right. That's great.
But that's what's so cool about my job is, I'm kind of the liaison between our members and our whole team, office staff that's in both Bismarck and Fargo. But we have policy experts on our staff. We have 2 people that work in that field.
Okay.
And that is their sole job day in and day out is to live, eat, breathe policy.
Okay.
And that's why a lot of people choose to become a member because they don't have to monitor what's happening in our state legislature, what's happening in Washington, D.C. They let us do the job.
That's a lot to ask of a farmer or rancher to do all this work on your farm, plus figure out policy and be involved in that.
Right.
And that's why we do the job that we do. So those farmers and ranchers don't have to worry about that. They can call us and say, hey, I hear this going through the grapevine, or I'm concerned that, this may move and come into law. What can you guys do about it? How can you advocate for us so they can stay home and harvest their crops and take care of their cattle? It's one thing they don't have to worry about, but really right now in the policy realm, well, of course, so at the end of last year, this is nationwide policy. They were, and you guys probably can relate to this too with nutrition and dietetics. We were supposed to get a new farm bill in 2024.
Right.
Yep.
Well, they just said, no, we'll continue on with the one we have. We may get to it next year, we may not. But a lot changes in 4 years.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So one thing that we're watching very closely right now is we need to get a new farm bill, or at least start talking about what's going to be in this new farm bill.
Right.
And granted right now in our state, we don't have an active legislative, session going on.
Right.
But there's still interim committees meeting. They're still talking about this is what we decided on during the last session, but now they're really implementing it. They're having committee meetings, to look and see, okay, how are we going to implement this? Do we need to go back next session? And, so that's my coworkers, they're still attending those meetings. They're still monitoring that. It's just so fascinating that even when you think stuff isn't happening, it still is.
It's happening.
Yep.
Okay.
It still is. And of course, November means an election year. And, whatever party, if there's a change in parties in our nation,
deal.
in our state, it's a big deal. And so our legislative team, on staff is already looking at, what happens if things change? What, maybe have Republicans versus Democrats had on their radar? And, because they're always thinking ahead.
Right.
It's
hard to be ready for anything.
It's hard to reverse something when it's already into effect.
Right.
Absolutely. And little things, I think details matter when it comes to like the farm bill being so big. And I feel like it affects different pieces. Like you mentioned, nutrition and dietetics. It affects like the school nutrition program. It affects like, the farmers, the ranchers, like different rules and like what that means. Like
it does.
And it's like the little fine details that, your policy experts would be the folks that would pick up on those versus like me. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm going to rely on my professional organization, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. We have our policy experts that do the same thing, but I see a lot of alignment there.
Yes.
And we're paying attention to the same things, but what does it mean for you? What does it mean for us? What does it mean for just our population that we're taking care of? So I think that's important. And you're right.
Is.
Like work is being done right now on the things that happened before.
Right.
It
Quietly.
is. Well, and I failed to mention this when we started talking about policy and you asked of what our organization does about it. The thing that we really pride ourselves on, so there's our state farm bureau, but there's a national organization, the, American Farm Bureau Federation. So that'd be, kind of our parent organization.
Okay.
And nationwide, there's over 1 million Farm Bureau members throughout the nation.
Wow.
A lot.
That's
a big group.
You can just see what sort of effect that has, in Washington, D.C., when they're trying to not only educate, our representation out there, but just to have an impact, to have a voice, to have a voice in agriculture. But where that all starts, to be honest, is we're a grassroots organization.
Yes.
So it all starts, I work with 13 organized county farm bureaus that are in the 13 counties in the northeast part of the state.
Okay.
And they all have a board of directors. They all have monthly meetings. They sit around a table just like you and I and that we're doing right now. And they just talk about what's happening in their backyard.
Like hot topics?
Yes. It's kind of like, I read this in the newspaper this morning and that doesn't make me very happy, or that does make me happy.
Right.
What can we do about it? How do we just support this, or how do we maybe make a suggestion to make this more farm and ranch friendly?
That's so cool.
And so they can they then form that into a resolution. Which then gets brought to our state annual meeting.
Oh, wow.
And they have debate at our state annual meeting on the policy floor and talk about whether they like this or they don't, or how it can be worded better. And so then, of course, some of those recommendations will be put into our policy book. And that is what my counterparts do, my coworkers who work in the policy sector. They have a policy book, and so they can go to the state capitol when issues are being heard and say, well, we support this, we don't.
Right.
This is how maybe we can come to, something that meets everybody's needs and wants. But then some of those policies actually get forwarded on to the American Farm Bureau.
Oh, that's cool.
And so some of those could end up into national policy books for
on a larger scale.
Yes. Yeah. So really it can all just start with that conversation around
the table.
Around the table at the local cafe.
Well, and it's so important to give a voice to these local people that you can then bring up to DC. That's wonderful.
Well, and it matters then. That shows that a voice, no matter how small of a place you live, like Bedford or Portland, North Dakota, where I grew up, like, you can still have a voice, and how that gets passed up and how you can speak up for what's right and what you believe in.
Because everyone wants to be part of the process, but sometimes
they do.
You can't.
It's scary or intimidating.
Yes.
Like, oh my gosh, well, nobody's going to listen to me. Sometimes
and you want to be heard.
Exactly. But it also gives us an opportunity, because I don't want to make it sound like, farmers and ranchers are always right and this and that. But it opens up opportunities to have conversations who may have with somebody who has a different view than you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even having a conversation between farming and ranching versus what you gals do for a living in nutrition dietetics, Yep. Well, this may work for the farmer and rancher, but here on our side of things, this is how it works. And you can meet in the middle.
Yes,
you can find common ground.
Common ground.
Yes, I love it.
Yes. Good pun.
I love how we brought that full circle.
I know. We're just getting better and better.
So people always ask me, okay, well, when you're not working, what do you do for fun? Yeah. And I probably just stole a question from you. But, when I'm not working, I'm working.
Right.
Because
You're on
there's
the farm.
always work to be done on the farm and ranch.
Yeah, but it's stuff you enjoy.
It is. It is.
Like it's part of your life. Like you talked about like how you're looking out the window in your kitchen and you're watching your cows. That's just, I love that. That just paints a picture in my mind of just pure joy.
It does. And that's, like you said, you were kind of creeping on Facebook. And that's why I love taking pictures too, to capture that beauty and share it with everybody.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
you
love
share.
that.
Everyone needs to check out
Yes.
Overby Ranch on Facebook because not only the pictures, you had some really good recipes. I want
Yes.
to try your grandpa's chili.
And I
That
will-
looked delicious.
Yummy.
And I want to be able to do more of that. And I'm trying to get better at posting more often and doing that sort of thing. So not only do I love to share family recipes of mine or just, so my mom growing up, she stayed at home for 25 years with us kids. But she was out there in the combine. She was, help calving cows,
Yes.
but she was the best cook. We always had dinner and just so to go back, now that I'm on my own and cooking for my husband and I, I call my mom up. Well, how did you make that beef pot roast that I loved so much growing up as a child? And so I get to learn those things and share them with others. And if you're looking for more opportunities to check out, things like that may be sort of blogish, if you will. So NDFB has their own blog and it's called On Your Table.
Okay.
That sounds intriguing.
Yes. And so
to
what's
us.
on, what can I read about on your table?
I would actually say it's very similar to a lot of the different things you talk about in this podcast and the Common Ground podcast. Not only are there recipes and things like that from, farm wives or even the husbands that cook themselves, but it talks about, buzzwords like GMOs and antibiotics, but it's our members that we say, hey, you're a really good writer. Would you want to share information about that? We, ask our members to talk about why you treat a calf when it's sick.
Right.
Or just they're a really good cook or they're a honey producer or, they're starting to sell meat or milk right off the farm. They're telling their stories on those blogs.
Oh, that's
in
so
those
fun.
posts.
We have to check that out.
Yes, for sure.
Yes.
For
and
sure.
when that blog started, it was ultimately to reach the consumer, to have that connection between a dairy farmer and hear their story and share a fun recipe or two.
Oh, that's so awesome. We're definitely checking that out.
Look at
Heather.
that too.
Yes.
Lots to do.
What do you think?
I'm ready.
Are you? I don't know if I'm ever ready,
Post half
Heather.
time. Do you have questions for us?
I do. I came prepared because I will say I'm one of those people in school that had to study, had to write out notes. So I came prepared with my notes.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
We like that.
Yep.
Okay. So whenever you gals are ready, I will ask the first question.
Okay.
I'll ask the easy one first.
You're serious today, Jen. I'm a little nervous.
I can see her face and she's like, I'm going to win
She's
this.
like getting in the zone.
I'm trying.
Okay, so the first question I have for you is, what percentage of North Dakota land is used for grazing cattle and or growing crops? So
Oh, okay.
what percentage of land in North Dakota is used for agriculture production?
Oh,
85%.
I said 80.
One of you was closer.
Who?
What is it?
90%.
Good job, Jen.
Yes.
Wow, 90%.
90. I knew it had to be big because we're geographically large.
Yes.
But not in population.
Right.
So by
No.
deduction, I'm like,
But the cool thing about that, 90%, and you talked about this on one of the previous episodes, was, the economic impact
Yes.
that agriculture has
Huge.
in our state. Well, if 90% of our land is being used for that purpose, of course it has a
Yes.
huge impact.
right.
And so that actually equates to 39.1 million acres.
Whoa. Million acres.
I'm
Yeah.
glad they left a little land for us to live on, though.
I mean-
that was nice.
Yeah, that was.
Yes. Okay, are we ready for the next
yes,
one?
we're ready.
And this is more of a fun one.
Okay.
but it has a tie to me personally.
Okay.
So I might give you a little hint.
Okay.
But where in North Dakota was the iconic albino buffalo White Cloud raised? Like if you ever drove past Jamestown,
Oh,
the
I
big
thought
buffalo statue.
so it's not there.
So it's not there.
That's not where he was
Jamestown.
raised.
Where was he raised? Where did he come from?
Because believe it or not, we do have bison ranches, buffalo farmers in North Dakota. I love that these are your answers.
Michigan, North Dakota.
Bedford. I don't know. Just guessed.
I know, right?
Oh, you know,
Because she said it's attached to her.
Yes,
I know, right? So it's
Michigan
either-
is the correct answer.
I think my meditation helped.
We're on the same wavelength, apparently.
That's so cool.
I'm channeling Megan right now.
Yes. So it's called the Sherrick Buffalo Ranch.
Okay.
Cool.
That is where White Cloud was born and raised, and eventually
Wow.
made his home in Jamestown because he was pretty iconic.
Yes.
To have an albino or white buffalo. But that was raised right here in North Dakota and actually only 10 miles from my family farm where I grew
I
up.
love it. Oh, I love it.
Okay.
That's so
a-
neat.
That's a great trivia question.
It is.
Yes.
I'm glad that I know that now.
Yes, me too.
Okay, now that our brains are, warmed up, I saved
Yeah.
the hardest one for last.
Okay.
Okay.
So, what is the ideal moisture content when baling hay? Well, forages in general, when baling.
I mean,
Some people in our own industry might even know this.
What did you?
Might not even
I
know
just
this.
put 0%. I mean,
put
you want it
below
dry.
10%.
Okay,
Super dry.
I know, right?
and we're gonna get an education on
Or
this
do you
one.
need
It's
a little?
fun.
Do you need a little moisture for it to ferment, like you were saying?
Oh, yeah.
So
wait.
answers are already in. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Oh, man.
But it's 13 to 16%.
Oh, because there's going to be a little moisture.
Yes. So, and that's some things people
13
don't
to
always realize,
16.
Well, why? And disclaimer. So, my favorite activity to do on our farm and ranch is to make hay all summer long. I could sit in the baler or, the cutter or the rake, and I could just sit in the tractor all summer long. And so could my husband and make hay.
It smells good.
It
Like,
smells
I
good.
love the smell of that.
As long as you have AC in your tractor,
Yep.
it's golden.
Right.
Pack a cooler. Keep me out there all day long.
Okay.
Nice.
Or all night long. So,
Oh,
did you know ranchers make hay at night?
I didn't.
I did not
So
know
it's
that.
like a 24-hour job.
It is because, and so I'll explain why moisture content is important, especially when baling alfalfa, which of course
Okay.
is a whole plant. It's
Yep.
a plant that you grow.
Pretty
But
flowers.
yes, very beautiful purple flowers, purple whitish. So that alfalfa plant, when we're, it's just naturally starting to dry down a little bit or weather impacts it. But when we go to cut that, we let it lay there. And depends on if there's humidity, how hot it is, how cold it is. But essentially, when we put that in a bale, we want it to be, and some alfalfa moisture content can be higher, but ideally right around that 15% moisture.
Okay.
Because what happens if it's too dry? Like if
It'll
the
break.
if the
Yeah,
plant
it'll
was
start to-
completely dried down, we're going to lose the leaves off of that.
Okay.
And so, the leaves aren't going to stay attached to the stemmy part.
Okay.
And so that's where the nutritional content is in
Makes
the
sense.
leaves of the plant.
Makes sense.
And
Yeah.
so, sometimes we'll wait until 9 o'clock at night to go out there and start baling it because there's a little bit of dew on top.
Sure.
And, you want some of that moisture in there. And it makes more nutritional,
Which that's
forage
what you
for our
want,
cattle.
Right? It's like, honey, it's time to bale hay. Date
Yes.
night, Friday night,
Let's go.
9 p.m.
It is. It is. I have been out in the hayfield till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning.
Kind of sounds relaxing though.
It is, especially on a nice, bright,
Right.
beautiful North Dakota evening.
Some music and a LaCroix.
Right?
Yes.
That is yes.
And then
my
it's funny
favorite.
because, believe it or not, we have beautiful hills where I live, but there's some flat parts too.
Okay.
And then you can look across and say, oh, the so-and-so's over there. They're baling alfalfa too, because you can see it miles down the road,
Yes, you
see the
can.
tractor lights.
That's always amazing to folks that maybe don't live in North Dakota, like how far you can see.
Yes.
It's kind of amazing.
Yes.
Well, cool.
So we do have one last
Yes,
question
we
for you
do.
before you
Okay.
go. We hear often, how great the people are in North Dakota within agriculture. We've been able to talk to so many of them. But beyond the people, what would you say is your favorite part about being involved in North Dakota agriculture?
So it still relates to the people, but it's in a broader sense. Just
Okay.
that sense of community.
Oh,
You know, a lot of people, when they've answered this question in the past, they say, I love that our families get to farm together and raise our kids that way. My husband and I don't have kids yet, but, as I've explained throughout this podcast episode, it really is a family affair. I grew up in a family farm. I'm now living on a new family farm, and my husband and I have our own family. But that sense of community.
Yeah.
Living in a small town. And of course, a lot of the people around you are farmers and ranchers as well.
Yeah.
And, for my work as well, I get to work with farmers and ranchers every day. But not only, are they people I met through work, but their family too.
Right.
My community just isn't the town I live in. It's people I've met throughout the years to network. And now I know fellow farmers and ranchers from all over the nation just because of the opportunities, I've had in the field of agriculture and working and living it, and just really I learned something new.
Right.
Every time I go out to a conference or just even sit around a cafe table and while they have a county farm bureau meeting, I learn from them and they learn from me. And that's just such a great community to be involved with.
Oh, I love that.
It's so true, too.
It is.
Yes.
Thank you, Megan. We're so lucky to have you in North Dakota and for coming in today to talk to us.
Well, thank you, ladies, for having me. And I enjoyed our conversation.
Yes.
Yes, same.
Thank you. Okay.
Wow. I didn't know about the moisture content.
But
it makes sense.
I feel
no,
like
I swear.
it's okay.
I think I just but it feels good.
But it makes sense, right? Because especially like those green leaves. Yeah, it does. Because then it would all just like turn to dust if it was 100%
well, and
dry.
then I think of like your chef background and my nutrition background. Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes, we use the leaves.
Right. We need the leaves. Leaves are important, right?
Right. Yes.
Really good. I liked that.
Yeah,
I have a lot
me
more
too.
questions, but
I mean, we could talk.
it was a
for
good
days.
start. Yes, we always can.
I know. So,
And because of that, there will be more.
There will
We have
be.
more episodes coming, and we have tons of great episodes that we've already done. So you can find those wherever you listen to podcasts or on YouTube if you
That's
want
right.
to watch and learn.
all right. Well, tune in next time for another episode of Common Ground ND.
See you then. Thanks for tuning in to the Common Ground North Dakota podcast. Make sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Most importantly, send us your questions about North Dakota agriculture by visiting our website. You might win a prize. We'll see you in the next episode of the Common Ground North Dakota podcast.